At my wedding reception, I stood for a moment, not by choice, but by a twist of fate. My reflection shimmered back at me from a copper backsplash, a surface I had poured 3 months of my life into, polishing it to an impossible, almost liquid mirror. That reflective sheen, that perfect finish, was the only reason I saw her dot Eleanor, my new mother-in-law. She materialized directly behind me, a silent phantom draped in silver silk. She did not see my eyes watching her through the copper. Her gaze was locked onto the delicate fluted glass of champagne resting on the bar. My champagne, I watched, frozen in a private theater of horror, as her manicured hand dipped into her clutch. A small glass vial emerged, followed by 3 clear drops that dissolved instantly into the golden liquid, vanishing like her conscience. I did not flinch. I did not betray the tremor threatening to seize my chest. I simply waited for her to glide away, a vision of deceptive grace, to greet some unsuspecting senator's wife with her kisses and practice charm. Then, with the precision of a surgeon, a skill born from years of handling irreplaceable artifacts, my hand reached out. In one fluid, almost imperceptible motion, I switched our glasses. Her venom was now nestled in her palm, and the real wedding drama had only just begun. Before we go deeper into this structural nightmare, take a moment, drop a comment below, and let me know where you are tuning in from and what time it is for you right now. I would love to connect with every corner of our community. Most brides, upon witnessing their new mother-in-law attempt to drug them, would be hyperventilating in the nearest restroom, their white dress becoming an ironic shroud. But I am a restoration architect. My world is one of failing foundations, of hidden rot, of the slow, inevitable collapse of history. Panic is not just unproductive. It is a structural flaw, a luxury I cannot afford. What coursed through me in that chilling instant was not fear, but a profound, almost academic recognition. Static load. That is the engineering term for the immense silent weight a beam endures, just before it makes its final irreversible decision. To uphold the entire structure or to snap catastrophically. My heart, a carefully calibrated pump, registered 80 beats per minute. Elevated, yes, but held firmly within controlled parameters. My heels clicked a steady, almost defiant rhythm against the polished hardwood as I made my way back to the head table. Ethan, my husband, sat there like a beacon of unsuspecting goodness. He was a pediatric surgeon, a man who daily salvaged young lives, yet remained utterly blind to the pathogen festering within his own family tree. He squeezed my hand beneath the linen, his thumb brushing the cool metal of my new ring. His eyes, full of such pure, unadulterated love, almost broke my composure. "You look beautiful," he whispered, entirely unaware that 10 feet away, his mother was savoring the very poison she had intended for my destruction. Across the table, Eleanor was already seated, holding court. She was the perfect, benevolent matriarch, a master of societal performance, laughing at my father's jokes, radiating an aura of impeccable charm. Then her gaze found mine. Her eyes were not merely cold. They were dead things buried beneath layers of expensive mascara, glittering with a predatory chill. She raised her glass, my glass, the poisoned chalice, in a silent conspiratorial toast. A subtle smirk, a barely visible curl of the lip that screamed checkmate. Darling. She believed herself the master architect of this moment, of my downfall. She saw me as nothing more than a lucky girl who had stumbled into her dynasty. An inconvenient structural problem to be remedied with a swift checkmate. A checkbook, or failing those, a discreet vial of chemicals. I reached for my water glass. My hand was a column of solid granite. No tremor. I took a slow, deliberate sip. The water was crystalline, cold. It tasted of pure clarity. I watched Eleanor take another drink of the tainted champagne. Such unshakable confidence in her own cruelty. For 2 years, she had relentlessly tried to bulldoze me. She had deemed my profession dirty work, an affront to her inherited grandeur. She had offered me 6 figures, a severance package for my presence in her son's life. But she had overlooked one fundamental truth about restoration architects. We do not just understand decay. We know precisely where the weak points lie, and we can hear the groaning of a structure long before it finally collapses. I set my glass down with a soft clink echoing in my ears. I smiled back at her, a quiet knowing smile, and I waited to truly grasp why I did not intervene. Why I did not expose her right there. You must first understand the intricate architecture of our war. This was not a sudden impulsive crime of passion. It was the calculated demolition phase of a project Eleanor had been meticulously managing for 2 agonizing years. From the instant Ethan introduced us, I was to her a gross zoning violation in her perfectly curated world. The Sterlings are what people condescendingly call old money, which in my experience simply means their wealth is dusty, and they are pathologically terrified of anyone who actually works for a living. My first encounter with Eleanor was during an estate inspection. I arrived in work boots, my hard hat adorned with the honest grit of drywall dust. She looked at my hands as if my very touch carried a contagion. Then, in front of me, she asked Ethan if he was hiring the help for some remodeling. When he explained I was his girlfriend, her perfect smile did not falter, but her eyes hardened, delivering a single dismissive syllable. Oh, her insults were never loud, never vulgar. They were structural. Subtle cracks in the foundation meticulously placed to ensure my eventual collapse. She would forget to invite me to family dinners. She would introduce me to their esteemed friends as Ethan's little project manager, deliberately erasing my master's degree and my professional license. But the real structural failure, the moment the weight became undeniable, happened 6 months before the wedding. I was in her cavernous library. She slid a cream-colored envelope across her mahogany desk. Inside was a cashier's check for $100,000. Her voice was like polished marble. "You are a lovely girl, Olivia," she purred. "But let us be realistic. You are new money. You build things. We own things. You will never truly be comfortable at this table. And I am merely trying to save you the embarrassment of trying." I looked at the check. More money than my parents made in 2 years. I looked at her, then back at the check. I did not tear it. I did not throw it. I simply slid it back across the desk. "I think you are underestimating the cost of labor, Eleanor," I said, my voice steady as steel. "I am not for sale." That was the moment her eyes truly changed. I ceased to be a nuisance. I became a structural threat. And threats in her world had to be neutralized. In psychology, there is a concept called an extinction burst. I learned about it not from studying human behavior, but from understanding how extreme stress affects building materials, how they react before ultimate failure. But it applies perfectly to narcissists. When a toddler realizes that their incessant screaming is not getting them what they want, they do not quiet down. They shriek louder. They flail. They break toys. They escalate their behavior to a frantic peak, a desperate final explosion of energy to force the world back under their control, before they finally, grudgingly, give up. The week before the wedding was Eleanor's extinction burst. The bribes had not worked. The subtle insults had proven ineffective. The wedding was going to happen. So she went scorched earth. On Tuesday, she called our florist and attempted to cancel the order, fabricating a grotesque lie that the bride had died in a tragic car accident. Thankfully, our florist, a woman of sharp intuition, called me first. On Thursday, I caught her in the bridal suite, meticulously inspecting my veil. When she departed, a jagged tear marred the delicate French lace. She claimed it caught on her ring, but I know the tensile strength of French lace. You have to want to rip it. I repaired the veil with gold thread, a technique I often employ in historical restoration, weaving strength back into what was damaged. I did not breathe a word to Ethan. I knew her game. She would spin it, gaslight him, dismiss me as paranoid, just a stressed bride imagining things. Her power lay in the sheer insanity of her actions. so outlandish that no rational person would believe them. So when I saw that vial at the reception, everything clicked into place. This was not random malice. This was not just hatred. This was the final desperate detonation of her extinction burst. She could not stop the wedding, so she would ruin the memory of it. She wanted me sick, humiliated, exposed as weak, and unworthy of the sterling name to every high society guest. She wanted a disaster. I simply decided to let her be the unwitting victim of her own design. The thing about structural failure is that it is rarely instantaneous. Before a building collapses, it groans. The rivets pop. The wood splinters. You just have to be quiet enough to hear it, discerning enough to understand the language of decay. The reception hall roared with applause as Ethan concluded his speech. Charming and self-effacing and utterly perfect. He sat down and kissed my cheek, whispering that he was the luckiest man alive. Then the room fell quiet. The almost imperceptible tapping of a spoon against crystal echoed like a warning bell. Eleanor rose, regal in her silver gown. She held the champagne flute, the one with the gold rim, the one she had tainted, high in the air. The room waited, hushed. She offered a gracious smile to the guests, then turned her gaze directly to me. That predator's glint burning in her eyes. Marriage, she began. Her voice projecting with practice finishing school cadence is about partnership. It is about knowing who you are and where you come from. A few of her friends at table offered polite chuckles. And most importantly, she continued, her gaze pinning mine on the word, it is about trust. Knowing that the person sitting next to you has your best interests at heart. I did not blink. I raised my water glass. Eleanor, with the ultimate flourish of hubris, raised the poisoned chalice. To the happy couple, she declared. She tipped the glass back. I watched the golden liquid disappear down her throat. I watched her swallow. One gulp. To dot she drained it. A single confident swallow. For a suspended moment, the world held its breath. Nothing. No dramatic gasp. No sudden collapse. Eleanor, ever the performer, settled back into her chair, a smirk of triumph playing on her lips. She turned to my father, already launching into a polite scathing critique of his golf handicap. 1 minute ticked past, then 2. I sat perfectly still, my hands clasped in my lap, each beat of my heart a metronome marking the slow, agonizing passage of time. At precisely 2 minutes and 40 seconds, the first low groan escaped her. Eleanor's polished monologue stuttered, dying mid-sentence. Her eyes, usually so sharp and calculating, blinked rapidly, losing focus. Her hand flew to her throat, a desperate unconscious gesture. The heavy mask of foundation and composure that usually defined her face began to crumble, giving way to an alarming, ghastly shade of gray. She tried to rise, perhaps to make a hasty, dignified retreat to the powder room. But gravity, in league with her own poison, had other plans. Her knees buckled. She scrabbled at the pristine white tablecloth, desperate for purchase, only to drag a towering centerpiece of exotic lilies and glass crashing down with her. Then the emetic, true to its merciless chemical structure, did exactly what it was designed to do. This was no polite swoon, no graceful fainting spell. This was primal and violent. Eleanor retched, a guttural, ugly sound that tore through the polite chatter, silencing the string quartet mid-arpeggio. She vomited, a torrent of bile and champagne directly onto the gleaming head table, staining the pristine silk runner, drenching the bespoke china, splattering the custom-made skirt of her silver gown. The stench, sharp and acidic, hit us instantly. The woman who had spent 6 years meticulously cultivating an image of untouchable perfection, of glacial control, was now heaving in a wretched broken heap on the floor, in front of 200 of the city's most discerning elite. Ethan's shout ripped through the sudden horrified silence. "Mom!" He was instantly on his feet, rushing to her side. "Mom!" He dropped to the floor, his surgeon's training kicking in, his hands already searching for a pulse, checking airways. He barked commands, rapid fire and clinical. Pulse thready, airways clear, pupils dilated. Eleanor looked up at him, her eyes wide and unfocused, gasping for air. I don't, she slurred, her words thick with distress. I don't feel. And then with a soft, sickening thud, she collapsed sideways into the very mess she had made. The room erupted into chaos, a cacophony of gasps and whispers and rising panic. But I, the architect of this controlled demolition, remained seated for 1 second longer, watching the ruin. It was ugly. It was tragic. And it was exactly the disaster she had designed for me. In a crisis, most people succumb to panic, their internal structures failing under pressure. But as the guests screamed and crowded around, I rose. My voice, low but clear, cut through the rising hysteria. DJ, cut the music. The celebratory notes died abruptly. Coordinator, clear a path for the paramedics now. My mind, trained to assess structural integrity under stress, was already mapping out the quickest route. Ethan was still on the floor with his mother, his face a mask of professional concern, his hands working to stabilize her. The paramedics arrived with astonishing speed, just 4 minutes later, a testament to my earlier precise directions. They loaded Eleanor onto the stretcher, a pale moaning bundle of silver silk and shattered pride. As they lifted her, her beaded clutch bag, which had been resting precariously on her lap, slid off and hit the polished hardwood. The clasp sprang open with a soft click. Its contents spilled across the floor. A designer lipstick, a gilded compact mirror, and a small empty glass vial. Ethan saw it. He froze, his gaze locked onto the innocuous piece of evidence. But that was not the smoking gun. Next to the vial, folded into a crisp square, lay a piece of heavy cream-colored stationery. I reached down, my fingers already anticipating the familiar texture. I knew what it was before I even opened it. Eleanor's elegant looping script, a pre-written narrative. I walked over to Ethan. He was still staring at the vial, his face utterly devoid of color, the initial panic giving way to a dawning horror. Ethan, I said, my voice cutting through the residual noise of the room, precise and steady. Read this? Confused, he took the paper. I watched his eyes scan the words. Ladies and gentlemen, I must apologize for the interruption. My new daughter-in-law has struggled for years with personal demons. We hoped the stress of the wedding would not trigger a relapse, but it seems the alcohol was too much. Please forgive the mess. We will get her the help she needs. It was not merely a note. It was a speech, a meticulously crafted preemptive strike, penned before the reception even began. She had not just planned to make me sick. She had planned the entire narrative of my destruction. She intended to frame my poisoning as a drunken bulimic meltdown. She was going to seize the microphone while I was incapacitated, a twisted architect of character assassination, and demolish my reputation forever. I watched the change happen in Ethan's face. It is a rare, almost brutal thing to witness a man become an orphan while his mother is still alive. The immediate professional concern for her physical well-being dissolved, replaced by a chilling absolute certainty. His eyes went cold, hard as granite. He looked at the note, then at the empty vial, then at the pathetic figure of his mother being wheeled away on the stretcher. He finally saw the complete horrifying architecture of the trap. He realized that the monster was not some phantom under the bed. She was the one who had lovingly tucked him in every night. He folded the damning note, his movements deliberate, and slipped it into his tuxedo pocket. He did not look at me. He looked at the paramedic, his voice now devoid of any emotion, clinically precise. She did not have a stroke, he stated, his voice like the grinding of metal. She ingested an emetic and a sedative. Check her bag for the other vial and call the police. The hospital smelled of antiseptic, fear, and bad decisions. A stark, sterile antithesis to the fragrant chaos of the reception. Eleanor was stabilized in a private room, the drugs flushed from her system. But the legal toxicity, the real structural damage, was just beginning. Police were already waiting in the hallway. Officer Cardona, A man whose weary eyes suggested he had witnessed enough family dramas to last 10 lifetimes, was taking my statement. I did not need to be emotional. I just needed to be efficient, to present the facts as an unbiased assessment of a structural failure. While the paramedics were loading Eleanor, I had quietly texted the venue manager. Because I had overseen the restoration of the Sterling estate, I knew every blind spot, every hidden conduit, and precisely where the 4K security camera behind the bar was angled. I had the footage in my inbox before the ambulance even reached the hospital. I showed the officer the video. Time-stamped to 4:47 p.m. Eleanor looks around. She pulls the vial. She drops the poison. It was high-definition proof of a felony, as undeniable as a crumbling support beam. Ethan emerged from Eleanor's room. He looked 10 years older than he had that morning. The boyish charm scoured from his face, replaced by a desolate weariness. He walked past me, past his father, who sat slumped in a chair with his head in his hands, and went straight to Officer Cardona. "My mother is awake," Ethan said, his voice flat and detached. "She wants to make a statement." "Did she confess?" the officer asked. Ethan let out a dry, humorless laugh that held no mirth, only a profound emptiness. "No. She told me she did it to save me. She said Olivia was a gold digger ruining the Sterling bloodline. She said I would thank her one day. I watched Ethan. This was the moment. The critical juncture where the weight would either snap the supporting cord or strangle us both. Eleanor had played her final, most insidious card. The mother knows best defense. She was banking on 30 years of cultivated guilt, an ingrained obligation to make him drop the charges, to pull him back into her orbit of control. But Ethan reached into his tuxedo pocket. He pulled out the cream-colored stationery, unfolded it, revealing the meticulously pre-written apology speech. "The evidence of premeditation," Ethan said, his voice now a blade of ice, handing the paper to the officer. "My mother did not just try to physically assault my wife. She planned a full-scale character assassination. She wrote this before the reception even started. This proves intent." "Ethan, don't," his father whispered, his voice cracking from the chair. "She is your mother?" Ethan turned to him, his eyes like chipped flint. "No," he said, his voice cutting through the air like a saw. "She is a criminal. And if you pay for her lawyer, you are an accomplice." He turned back to Officer Cardona, his stance unwavering. "I am pressing charges, and I am requesting an immediate restraining order for myself and my wife." I watched him sign the statement. It was the most brutally romantic thing I had ever witnessed. He did not just choose me. He amputated the toxic limb that was slowly killing us both. He cut her off with the chilling precision of a surgeon removing a malignant tumor. There were no tears, no dramatic outbursts, just the crisp, decisive sound of a pen on paper, finalizing the divorce between a son and his toxic origin. It has been 12 months since our wedding day. Eleanor is currently serving a 24-month sentence for aggravated assault and reckless endangerment. Her lawyer, bless his optimistic heart, tried to argue diminished capacity, but the pre-written note, my meticulously sourced video footage, and Ethan's unwavering testimony shredded that defense. You cannot claim temporary insanity when you have drafted a press release. About it 3 days in advance. Ethan and I did not move into the Sterling estate. We bought a fixer-upper on the other side of the city. It has good bones, a solid foundation, but it needs work. A lot of it. Just like us. I am sitting at our kitchen table now, patiently working on a ceramic bowl I broke last week. It is a Japanese art form called kintsugi. The philosophy is not to hide the cracks, but to fill them with a lacquer mixed with powdered gold. The idea is that the piece becomes more beautiful, more resilient, because of its breaks. The break is where the true strength is forged. For a long time, I believed a perfect marriage meant no conflict, a lifetime of smooth surfaces and easy days. But Eleanor, in her perverse way, taught me something invaluable. She tried to shatter us. She tried to find our stress points, to hammer at them until we crumbled. but she fundamentally miscalculated the materials. When we sat in that hospital waiting room, watching the police lead her away in handcuffs, Ethan and I did not fall apart. We fused. The trauma did not leave a scar. It left a brilliant seam of gold. We trust each other with a depth most couples never reach, precisely because we were tested, pushed to our breaking point, and found each other stronger for it. I know with an absolute certainty that hums in my bones that he will always choose me, and he knows that I will always see the threats he is blind to. I finished the bowl, carefully smoothing the final golden line. The afternoon sun streams through the window, catching the kintsugi, making the gold lines shimmer brighter and more luminous than the original ceramic ever was. It is imperfect, it is jagged, and it is fundamentally unbreakable. If you believe that toxic family members do not deserve a seat at your table, hit that like button and share the story. And tell me in the comments what is the pettiest, most outrageous thing a relative has ever done at a wedding you attended. I am genuinely curious to hear your stories of chaotic celebrations.